This is Christian Farmer at Semiconductor Trade Group, and this is your end of day market recap for Tuesday, February 24th. Markets bounced back today. It was a turnaround Tuesday with S&P up 0.7 of a percentage point, Qs up. Oh, let me switch over my spreadsheet here for a second. Sorry about that. Qs up 1.1%, IWM up right around the same percent for the day. Very interesting because this market can look, depending on what areas that you're looking at, completely different from one day to the next. Risk disclaimer in front of you. Everything that we're going through, of course, is for information purpose only. Please read the full risk disclaimer right there. But what I'm referring to is Friday. Nice close on Friday and nice movement, and it looked like we might be turning the corner. Monday, not so much, as we moved back to the downside. We didn't break any support, just like on Friday we didn't really break any resistance to the upside, and then today we're back up again. So looking at the indices, when you look at SPY, Qs, and IWM, and we will do that, there's not much of a change that's happening there, but we're continuing to see the leaders lead in this market. Now there's a bunch of other areas that are kind of oscillating around. We'll go through a couple of those areas, but for the most part, your semiconductors, your telecom stocks are doing very well in the tech space. Biotech put in another strong day today too. Utilities have been strong as well, and I like what's going on in the metal space as well. So that should be enough to review. I mean, there's a lot to talk about for today, but I'll try to keep it somewhat on track here. I also just want to review. Let's go to the charts for. Let's talk about the indices first, and then we'll get into the sectors, into some single names. But here's what I'm referring to. Here's SPY. And we can zoom in here a little bit so that you can see these levels. But ultimately, we're not going anywhere. Here's what I was referring to about Friday: back inside value, back outside of value on Monday, and then a little bit of a lower high there put in, and that level we did close inside the February value area, which we're going to have for a few more days, and that level has been 687.11. If you read my midday note, then you know that level by now, because I kind of been quoting that level quite a bit. Here's what this looks like on the 1 hour chart too, because on the 1 hour chart you've got this week's value area. But notice how we're kind of just tagging. Where this yellow box is the value area for the month. The blue box is the value area for the week. And 688, you could see, like, we're just hitting this, and we just don't have the power. Whenever we get to resistance, we just can't seem to get through it, or it just doesn't look convincing when you look at what's happening here. Let's do the Qs as well. Same thing. We're below the 20. We're below the 50-day moving average, but we're above the value area for the year, which is your major support, and that's what that looks like. Let's just bring this over here. Right. And again, I show this a lot, but that gray box is this gray box on the weekly chart. So really, that's the big level to stay above. That's 592.67. We're doing that, but we're not going anywhere. And here's the Qs. Right. And today it was software stocks that bounced a bit, but I don't know if you're going to get much more of just a bounce out of them. So here we are. There was an inside day on Monday. There's another inside day today off of Friday's candle. Now, if we go to the 1 hour chart, again, things will you'll be able to see this picture a little bit clear, but look at the top of the value area for the week. That's 608.17. Again, if you're new to my videos, this value area for the week is based on all of the activity from last week. It's this box. The value area for the week is based on roughly one standard deviation of all the activity from last week. So you could see that becomes quite significant. We just can't seem to kind of get over that. If you go back a couple weeks ago, right, with the value area for back here, it was the same thing. The market just did not want to turn the corner. So it's not to say that it can't do it tomorrow, but again, it just shows like this market just is hesitating at any little resistance. So again, 608.17, and that'll be the level to watch for the rest of the week. IWM, it's kind of the same thing. It's almost comical at this point. that we're just not moving anywhere. This has been inside the value area for the whole month, besides this one candle in here. It got up to here a couple times, the top of the value area for the month. Even back on Friday, it got up there and couldn't do it. It went back to the bottom of the value area yesterday. Didn't break down either. So it's just basically staying at home. Home on the range, that is. Here's this week's value area. Again, we drifted below. We found that support yesterday in the bottom of the value area. But again, it seems like every time it looks like, wow, this is really going to be a big day, these things kind of just stall at some point, like somewhere around the middle of the day. That's what we've got for IWM. Now, let's talk about some sectors, right? And then we'll talk about some individual names. But what is leading this? What continues to lead this market? Well, oops, that's the wrong symbol, but it's the semiconductors. Even though they haven't really, gone anywhere in terms of breaking out since the end of January, they've returned to that level. There was some dips involved here, and again, it's still kind of staying around the highs of the session. We could look at this as well. This is the equally weighted semiconductor. You could also look at the SOX, which is another ETF for semiconductors, and it looks pretty good. Again, there's some cross currents that are going on, I feel like, within each group. This is XTL. You probably haven't heard of this ETF except for watching my videos, but it's an important one. It's telecom. Well, why is it an important one? Because it covers all the next strong, or right now probably the strongest group in tech, which is the optical names. And I will go over a few individual names here. I'll come back to the semis, but Light made another new high today, up 2%. Sienna had an inside day today. Corning had a new high today, up another 4%. So again, you look at, like, if you've been sticking in some of these names, then you're probably not having that hard of a time. You're not really complaining about this market too much, right? If you're stopping yourself out of the names that have been moving to the downside, and if you're holding on to the ones that are making new highs consistently, then you're not complaining much about this market, even though it's sideways, because there's things like this that are going on, every day. VIAV, I took some profits in this one today. This is another optical name, up 6.4% today. So again, it's really like looking at two different markets. And it's up to you to be a disciplined trader and not get yourself involved in messes. Now, again, there's been a lot of things that have been moving to the downside, so you may get caught in one or two trades, and hopefully you don't have too many paper cuts. But these things have been acting so well. So regardless of like everything that you hear on social media about how AI is horrible and about this and that, my stance has been, again, go towards the names where they're spending all the capital expenditures, and you will find some good opportunities, and there have been. We'll talk a little bit about the semiconductors. This is one that I've been in, have been looking at this one since the beginning of the year, and I got involved in this one. This is Form Factor. Nice semiconductor. SanDisk today kind of stalled out today, but did not lose that 5-period moving average. The rest of the memory chip names look a bit tired. This is Western Digital. This broke its 20-day moving average today. Micron also looks a little tired. It hasn't been able to get out of its value area for the week. It's kind of just been stuck here. And it did this last week too, every time it got to the top. So again, you see, like, for my time frame, I use this 1-hour chart quite a bit because it gives me hints about whether a stock is breaking out of, like very close resistance. And Micron just hasn't been able to do it for the last couple weeks. So the memory chip names look a little bit tired, but there are other names in this group. Look at this group. Look at this name today, probably off your radar. This is UCTT. Was up 17%, and I'll give you another one. This is one on our weekly watch list that I put out on Friday. This is AXTI. Look at this one's up 23%. Right? These are big moves for some of these names, and this is a name that just had earnings, and same thing with UCTT. But if you're going through and looking at names, that are either on the 52-week high list or I run another screen every couple of days that looks at names that have had strong earnings. We also put together a list at Tribeca Trade Group of strong earnings gap names, right? And those are names that that's my primary watch list for going through. And these names, you're going to find them. They're going to jump off the page to you, right? If you're looking for strong earnings names. All right, a couple other groups. I mentioned XME. Right, here's your metals and mining ETF. I think that this is kind of interesting here, right? So I know if you're like, oh, Christian, I can't get into some of those names that you mentioned. They've gone up too much. Well, here's something that's like just been hugging the 50-day moving average, and you're starting to see like just a lot of individual names start to look pretty good. This is ALB. This is Albemarle, which had earnings a couple weeks ago. This one's resolving higher. What's AG is one that had earnings, which has been a fantastic mover, one of these silver miners. So you're seeing more and more of these names. Look at what the copper miners did today. Right? Here's FCX. Right? Here's your consolidation. Here's your digestion, and here's your breakout. And there's the same thing at SCCO. Right? So up 1.7%. Made almost a new 52-week high today. So again, if you're paying attention to strength, again, all of these things should do reasonably well considering the AI trend. Now, I'm going to say it one more time, and if you've watched my videos on a daily basis, I've been drilling this into people's heads, but I don't want to be in the names that are spending their capital expenditures or billions and billions of dollars, right? That's the names that we want to avoid. Let them make their own mistakes. Let them make their, that's not my concern. And in my opinion, don't stay emotional attached because it's a good company over time. And I'm talking about like an Amazon or something like that. Sure, I use Amazon, but it's not my fault that they're going to spend $8 billion spending money to catch up with everybody else with AI. Go to where the resources are going to be used. That's what we've been doing, and that's helped a lot. I think even if you look at some of the data, like the data center names, the names that are involved in building out the AI. MOD made a nice made a nice move today. VRT also. Look at all these. Again, this should not be that difficult of a trade to think about. Some of the other crypto data center plays, mining names did well today. This is Wolf. Made a nice move. This is new highs for Wolf. IREN, which I don't really like this too much because it had a lot of the earnings. It was not a great reaction. The stock really hasn't acted well in months, but there's a lot of call buying in this one. What looked to be a call buying today, and Trump may be announcing a deal on data centers or something about data centers in the State of the Union address tonight. Fix just reported earnings. This one's a little bit tough to trade, but right back at new highs for Comfort Systems. Very, very strong. Powell, this is one I tried to get into this morning. It was one that I added to our watch list. Made a nice turn. So again, this is another one, right? If you're like, oh, it's too high, wait for it to come in. Wait for it to come into the 20-day moving average. This is textbook setup here. Textbook into the 20-day moving average, and it bounces. I like this team. It's just a little bit difficult to trade. I try to buy it on the open, and it was really wide. I sat like a little bit more than mid market, a little bit higher, and I didn't get filled on it. And 2 minutes later, it was off to the races, unfortunately. Here's what our watch list looks for this week. This is something that if you are a member of Tribeca Trade Group, I give this watch list every Sunday, and then I build upon it. You could see some a few names that I added the last couple days. So yeah, I mentioned the AXTI, VRT, STRL is a construction name. I'll bring up that chart as well, but you can see how many names have triggered here. It's pretty good. A couple other names that I would be watching for tomorrow. STRL. Let me just switch back to the charts. So yes, and by the way, look at this name. This name's going to report earnings, by the way, this week. But very nice move in STRL. Also, Alcoa looks like that's trying to turn the corner as well. I don't love this setup as much as some of the other international names, like a Valley or an MT. MT kind of came in a little bit today, but these are a little bit too extended for me, so I've held off on these. Also, uranium, really like the setup in UUUU, right? Trying to turn the corner. Again, this is not extended, right? This is right into the 50-day moving average. So obviously, it's a little bit easier today when the Qs are up 1% and when SPY's up 0.7 of a percentage point, right? You're going to see a lot more good-looking things. But I'll tell you, a lot of these names have been holding up just fine, even on the down days, recently. And again, this is a little bit different than what we saw in the first couple weeks of February. Really, since I would say last Thursday is where I started to see things and setups just materialize. And that's perfectly normal, by the way. As I went through most of the names that I've gone through, were a bit extended, and they needed to come in a little bit. But I tell you, since last Thursday, I've just been seeing a lot more things that look better, even though the indices are not making any headway. And by the way, like, to me, that's okay, right? Is if your system says you're not getting involved in names and downtrends, you're not getting involved in names that are breaking down, right? You're only looking at the best names, the names that had good earnings, right? Then it shouldn't concern you too much that the indices are not making any major moves, because you've got groups and you've got single names in those groups that are doing quite well. Again, if you want to get access to our watch list and our trading room and what we do on a daily basis, sign up tribecatradegroup.com. If you're a new member, you can get 50% off by putting coupon code TTG new.